Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar this morning with Intel Security, focusing today on the threat landscape and SIEM. My name is David Bloxham, the Marketing Manager at Software One. Thank you for joining us. Before I hand over to Chris Page, who will be taking today's webinar, just a few housekeeping rules. As you may have noticed as you joined today's session, being set on mute. This just to ensure that the sound quality remains at an optimum as we go through the webinar. If you do have any questions, and we do encourage them, then please feel free to use the chat box facility, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Chris, if I can hand over to you to take us through the session.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you fine.
Yep, fantastic. I've just realised I am next to a very squeaky door in the adjoining meeting room, so if you hear a funny noise, I do apologise. So sorry about that. Okay, so morning everyone. My name is Chris Page. I am the pre-sales consultant for the Intel Security team here at Arrow ECS. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through a presentation on threat landscape and SIEM and how SIEM can help you address threat landscape and the problems that you face these days. Thanks to the guys at Software One for arranging it. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end where my contact details will also be up. So if you have any questions, any queries, drop me a line or get in contact with your account manager at Software One and we'll be more than happy to help you. So to begin, threat landscape. So what's happening nowadays is things are getting far more complex. So with the Internet of Things, people having more devices, more data, people accessing environments using all sorts of uncontrolled devices, how do we actually understand what's going on? And customers, in terms of end users and in terms of corporate users, how do you actually keep control? And the speed of frequency of attacks is increasing on those devices as well. So it's gone from broad, widespread attacks, which had a fire and forget approach, to a more focused, targeted attacked environment. So aimed at specific, typically high-value targets. And attackers have become more selective with their targets, and this comes with attacks that are specifically tailored to the target themselves. And these custom attacks are designed to maximize impact and damage and minimize detection and remediation efforts. And operationally, customers are also facing challenges because your current staff, you are limited. You only have a finite resource. So you have staff being asked to manage more, to look for more, look after more systems, and look out for more threats using themselves. So you're very, very limited to what you can do against the Internet, which is essentially the Wild West. And the Internet of Things is giving more people the ability to access data from more devices. It's growing exponentially. So the problem that we have with security is tradition has become our security. And when the mind is insecure, it's in delay. Okay, one of the main problems of IT security today is understanding has not changed. And for years, people have been reluctant to change for whatever the reason. It's typically human nature. And security nowadays should be at the forefront of everyone's mind, whether it be an end user, you're protecting your credit card details, to the larger enterprise protecting IP, confidentiality, information and data. IT security has moved up in people's priorities, but some people still see this as an obstacle. So how do we change people's thinking? So the example here, the castle. So this castle was built hundreds of years ago to defend against the attacks of the day. And if you look at it, the only way in or out is across the drawbridge, and that is your point of attack. But to defend against modern day attacks, it's pretty much useless. If you wanted to go over the top with the drone, you could. If you wanted to attack by boat, strap something to the side of it and blow up the wall, you could do very easily. If you wanted to tunnel under, the technology is there to do it. So this was designed for the attacks of the day. And very often when you start building a network and building security around it, you are designing it for attacks of that day. And networks, as they evolve, which they evolve every day, so people building VMs, tearing down VMs, test environments, installing applications here, there, and everywhere, they're constantly evolving. So you need to have a system that evolves. And you also need to be aware of products that evolve as well. So very often when I speak to customers, I say to them, what does Intel security mean to you? And very often they just say, it's an endpoint solution. But it's not. Intel security have a lot more to offer than just an endpoint solution. They have adapted and evolved with the security market. So you should adapt with them. So in terms of the kind of threats that we're facing nowadays, I'm going to go through a couple of slides just to summarize this, but there's far more out there. But first of all, we'll look at ransomware. And this is one of the latest threats for end users and organizations. So if you are a person at home with one PC or Mac, it can affect you, or it can affect somebody on an enterprise. And it goes after you in different ways. If you're a user at home, it will go after your sensitive information, say your pictures, your iTunes, etc., things that are precious to you. But if you are working in an organization, a corporation, so say such as ours or Software One's, it will go after information such as your sales database, your emails. So the information that's sensitive to you. And what this does, it will encrypt your sensitive information and it will ask for a ransom. And unless you pay that ransom, that information, those files, those folders, they will remain encrypted and they're gone. And depending on your approach, whether you want to pay that ransom, which is not the best idea because you're essentially funding crime, but there's numerous debates on that, you have to think about how you're going to recover from that. Can you recover from your backups? But also, if you recover from your backups, are you still compromised? Which takes me on to the next point, which is when you have a compromised endpoint, it is the beginning of something a lot bigger. So once you've got one compromised endpoint on your environment, it's not going to take long before the rest of the environment is compromised. And not only endpoints, but servers. Because users these days have far reach into data centers. It's no longer the case you have an endpoint and everything is installed on your endpoint. You can have virtual applications, virtual desktops that are running on your data centers. So your hypervisors, your storage, users have very long reach into environments. And as a result, a compromised endpoint rapidly becomes a compromised infrastructure. So you need to think about how do you actively monitor your environments of threats and how you would remediate them. Another common term that you'll see is APTs, or Advanced Persistent Threats. And these take it up a few more notches, and these are stealthy, continuous attacks on organizations. And typically, they have specific targets in mind. There are some fantastic examples of Stuxnet, where the US and Israel were targeting Iran's nuclear program. Sony PlayStation were brought down. They had their end user details targeted. Nissan at the start of this year, their site was hacked because Japan supports whaling. I mean, who could have seen that? It's nothing commercial, it's a morality side of things. And you've got Anonymous lately, they are targeting Donald Trump because of the kind of stuff that he's been saying of late. So there's a real mixed bag of motives behind advanced persistent threats, but they are there. And they have a typical pattern. So first of all, they will define their target, and you start to do your research. So who are we actually going to target in terms of an organization, and who are we actually going to target in terms of individuals? And you'd start to then build and acquire your tools once you've decided who you're going to target. Then you test for detection and deploy. So if you tested and you weren't detected, you deploy and you get to the point where you have the initial intrusion on the environment. You then connect outbound, expand the attack, and start to take information out of that environment. You take what you need, and then essentially you cover your tracks and you will disappear. And hopefully you'll be none the wiser. And this happens a lot. TalkTalk was mentioned this morning on the news, and they're a great case which has been referenced in all sorts of presentations for months, but that just goes to show what can happen. And those were two kids in Ireland. They were daring each other to do this. So it just goes to show what can actually happen. And what do data breaches actually look like? You hear all the stories battered around the internet, on the Register, on BBC News, etc., etc. But visualizing them can be difficult because one party says one thing, one party says another. But there's a great website here. This is from the Information is Beautiful website. And it's a great visualization of attacks. So there's a few companies which I'm sure you'll recognize there. eBay, Experian, T-Mobile, VTech. There's a big long list of companies, and that actually gives you further information on what's happened and can give you an idea of the consequences of a data breach. So with the increasing complexity of people's environments and the increasing complexity of attacks, your resource constraints, so your IT guys and the tools that they use, they're a finite resource, and time being imperative, the time that you actually the time that you actually have to adapt to and deal with these attacks is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you have essentially a cauldron and a perfect storm of what's going on. So how do you deal with that? And what Intel Security want to do, or they are doing, should I say, is they are flipping this diagram. So this is today's issue. Your time to compromise is seconds, minutes. There are sites out there on the dark web where you can buy vulnerabilities. People have researched vulnerabilities and you can buy them and you can tailor your attacks to those. Your time to discover as an end user can be years, can be months, or could be months and could be years, should I say. So you could have malicious content on your environment for a very long time and you'll be absolutely none the wiser to what is going on. And then the third part of it is the time to recover. And the time to recover can take weeks or even months. And I know full well from friends and family, when they have a compromised laptop, my approach is to rebuild it. So you're guaranteed, or as guaranteed as much as you can, you've got a brand new machine with nothing malicious on it. Removing things manually can be a very laborious process and a very time-consuming process. So the idea is to flip this diagram to this. So we want to have the time to compromise going from seconds and minutes to months, possibly even years. Discover brought down to minutes and hours. So as an IT techie, administrator, wouldn't it be great if you had a solution that would tell you there is a vulnerability, there is a risk, there is a threat in a matter of minutes and hours of discovering it? A great the target supermarkets, and that's a well-known case that's referenced all over all sorts of articles on the internet. And Intel Security's SIEM solution went in and found a threat on their environment in a matter of hours. And this was to do with credit card information being stolen. It was going out of the company and they had no idea what was going on until the SIEM solution went in. And the third point is time to recover. So taking it from the weeks to months, reducing it to minutes, and start to bring automation into the process of recovery. It's all well and good having a team of technical people that can go around and remove threats and correct them and reboot and this, that, and the other. But what if you had a system that could adapt to that? So adapt to and adjust all different components on your environment. So not only alerting, but saying, we need to automate this process for the endpoint, for our web gateway, for our IDS and IPS. You can start to do that. So what Intel have done is they have come up with the threat defense lifecycle. So this is an adaptive lifecycle. I'll bring up the last slide there, which all of the products from the Intel Security Suite plug into. So protect, it stops pervasive attack vectors while also disrupts the zero-day attacks and payloads. So it actively looks for everything what is going on all the time. Detect, it eliminates the low threshold software maneuvering through your network. So malicious content, the little nuggets of information, it will detect that and it will start to put all that information together and enable you to do something about it. Correct allows you to improve your triage and prioritize your response. So it's a great system of actually prioritizing what you need to do and when, and takes away the guesswork. And it So all of the products working together with SIEM as the core, constantly look at the environment and adapt to relevant. So the problem solving and pain points, SIEM is designed to address these three. So the complexity, it's going beyond the siloed security, which has been the norm for a very long time, where you had certain products to protect certain threat vectors. So an email appliance to protect email, a web appliance to protect web, endpoint to protect endpoint. It's taking that away, and it will take all the information from all your security and all your information products and put context around it, which I'm going to cover in a few slides' time. It allows you to respond faster. So again, taking the guesswork out of things and relying on alerts left, right, and center, it can pull all that information together and actually give you understandable and actionable reports and alerts, which are all context-rich and relevant to your environment. And also helps you with constraints. So with fewer resources, you need better tools. You need to adapt your environment so you get the most out of it. So with fewer resources, if you have one tool which brings all of those security and infrastructure products together for your administrators to use, you're onto a good thing. So I'm going to move on to the SIEM side of things now. And SIEM stands for Security Information and Events Management. And Intel Security's incarnation of it is called Enterprise Security Manager. There is a slide which summarizes the components in a few minutes' time. And yeah, so moving on. So with SIEM, I try and highlight two of the main problems that you have with your environment. One is your security posture, and the other one is the complexity of your environment. So with everybody's environment, which I'm sure so many can put their hands up, we've all got firewalls, we've all got antivirus, anti-malware, authentication, all sorts of security products dotted around the environment. And the bigger you are, the more sites you have, the more products that you tend to have, the more consoles, the more alerts, more information being generated left, right, and center. So how do you understand all of this information that you're being fed? So I come from a technical background. I used to be an administrator, so network administrator, and I know when you look at firewall log, you can have hundreds and thousands of logs generated in a minute. So how do you actually understand all that information and put context around it? But how do you actually take the information from your firewall and how do you relate it to your intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system? How do you combine that information together? With the siloed approach, as it's been for such a long time, you can't do that. So you need a tool that is going to do that for you. So this is a little cute example. So the picture here, the usual stuff, a virus from the Joker, spyware from the Penguin, malicious code from the Catwoman, and a phishing scam from the Riddler. 4 different attacks. So how do you actually piece those together? You'd need a system to do that for you, which is what SIEM can do. So what you actually need to know in your organization is what is going on, how important it is, and where should you focus resources. So you need to have an up-to-date understanding and a current understanding of what's going on. If you have all these different products, all siloed, all giving you reports at once, you are firefighting. And you introduce a lot of guesswork into the environment. So you think what could be a priority, in fact, isn't, and what isn't a priority is. Why look at 100 instances of antivirus that have been quarantined or deleted, where there's one email that's got through your mail gateway that could cause absolute havoc? So you need to understand what's going on and where, and you need to understand how important it is. but also you need to understand where you should focus your resource. So your IT teams, your infrastructure administrators, they need to be able to focus on what is important, and it takes away the guesswork, and it takes away teams saying, I've done this right, it's got to be another product's fault, and they go, I've got this right, it's someone else's fault. It takes that completely away and the guesswork out of IT. And what you are doing in your environment is you're generating all this security big data, so why not use it? You've got all this information that is sitting there on your products for God knows how long. Why not actually use it, collate it, put it all together, make the most of it, and understand your security posture. So alongside the complexity of your security posture is the complexity of your infrastructure. So great little diagram here. I've got one of my colleagues to put together for me. How do you actually understand what your infrastructure is telling you? Your infrastructure is full of hardware, servers, endpoints, switches, routers, appliances, applications, operating systems, hypervisors. These are in the vast majority of people's environments, and they are generating logs and information all day, every day. So how do you actually make sense of all that information? And how do you bolt it on to all the information that's been gathered from your security products? Without a SIEM solution, you can't do that. And again, you are firefighting. So systems generate tons of information. So put them all together so you can put context around everything, not only your security, but also your infrastructure. And that is the beauty of SIEM. So in terms of your environment, you have an entire plethora of vendors and solutions. So what SIEM can do is take a complete holistic view of your environment, and it gives you a defense in depth strategy. So you can go from your desktop and the app across your server infrastructure, across your security infrastructure, all the way into the cloud. So you can look at your entire environment and understand what is going on. You can do things such as monitor for security threats in real time. You can find out if you're compliant at the touch of a button. You can find out if you need to patch a server urgently and understand why and how it impacts the entire environment. So SIEM itself, so the Intel Security SIEM supports up to 188 vendors. These are security and infrastructure vendors, and it's not the individual products they support, it is the vendor as a whole. So if you would look at Intel Security, all of the products are supported. If we look at Microsoft, which will be on the following slide, there's an entire range of infrastructure components that are supported. Exchange servers, SQL servers, Active Directory. So there's a complete range of vendors and their products that you can look at. So it's not limited to Intel Security Solutions. It is as vendor neutral as possible. And technologies for it to look at, they include, but they're not limited to, firewalls, antivirus, anti-malware, web filtering, VPNs, all sorts of range of security products. And that also is the case with your infrastructure. So load balancers, applications, power supplies, UPSs, mainframes, switches and routers. You can look at a complete range of products, and it is as vendor neutral as possible. What you can also do is take information from third-party sources. You can create individual queries and data streams to feed into a SIEM solution, so you can understand even more of what's going on. And Intel Security can help you do that. So in terms of the SIEM solution itself, it's a solution that will fit whatever complexity of your environment. So I've spoken to very small users, I've spoken to enterprise users. They all have different use cases, but there's a complete range of who are looking at these solutions, and they have different approaches. Compliance, understanding their threat profiles, etc., etc. But SIEM is made up of a wide variety of components. And you start off, you can have physical and virtual appliances, and you can have a mix of the two. You're not limited to one form factor, and you can also have these in the cloud as well. And the brains around the SIEM solution is Enterprise Security Manager. So that's the central management and control product and configuration product, which you use to present everything to yourselves, your queries, your reports, splash screens if you're using them in the SOC, or splash screens for your directors to look at that everything is on the up and up or things are wrong. You do that from the Enterprise Security Manager. So that is your management console. That bolts onto three other main components, which is your log manager, which takes all of the logs that are generated from your products and organizes them. You have your event receiver, which acts as a funnel for all of the logs. So all of your data sources dotted around your environment, your security products, your infrastructure products, they all point to event receiver, and that acts as a funnel to direct everything to Enterprise Security Manager. You also have your advanced correlation engine, or your ACE, which correlates all of the logs and understands what is going on. So what is relevant to what? So are the logs generated on this firewall relevant to the logs generated on this IDS, and puts understanding and context all around it. In addition to that, you've got additional modules for application data monitoring. So you can actually look all the way down onto the endpoint and applications that are running on your endpoints. So you can analyze the behavior of what's going on. So if we were to look at Adobe Reader, it can look at the behavior of the application that's sitting on the endpoint. And is there anything it should be doing or shouldn't be doing? If it's behavior it shouldn't be doing, you can then action it. You've also got a database event monitor, which an organization such as ours, an organization such as Software One, will have a sales database and a customer database, and without them, we're out of business. This part of the product looks at the database as a whole and what is going on, who's logging on, who's logging off, who's attempting to log on, failed logons, behavior, queries. It'll look at everything that's going on your database environment to understand if there are any attacks. And also, with the SIEM solution, it also bolts onto Intel Security's connected architecture and also allows you to bring automation into everything. So it ties in with every product, and there's some I've listed here. So EPO, which is your central management product for pretty much everything and reporting. You've got TIE and DXL. TIE is your local reputation server, and DXL is the communication medium which all the products talk to. You've got Network Security Manager, GTI, which is Global Threat Intelligence, ATD, which is a sandboxing solution, and you've also got SIA partners. And SIA partners such as the likes of Checkpoint are starting to bolt onto the SIEM solution, so you get far more value out of your infrastructure. And what this also does, it allows you to introduce automation. So if you were an Intel Security endpoint user and your SIEM solution took all this information from your environment, found something that could be addressed at the endpoint by a rule change, or if you had the web gateway that needed to remove or block a URL, you can start to automate those processes. So you don't have to rely on people such as your IT administrators having to make changes manually. So it's going from the manual side of things, interpreting, to full automation. So you get the response times that you need to help in your defense. So moving on to the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is the final point in the presentation, and the Enterprise Security Manager's position in the Gartner Quadrant has been a leader, and it has been a leader for a very long time. This goes back to the days of it being a product offered by Nitro Security, which was purchased by McAfee in 2011 and subsequently purchased by Intel Security. And Intel Security are intent on this being a leading product for the forever future. This is a product which ties in with the key security messages of Security Connected and Protect, detect and correct, and it is core to everything that they are doing. And the more value you get out of the products, the better. Now, there are some key highlights in the Gartner report. I'm not going to bore you by reading through them all. We can make the URL available for the Gartner report for you. The guys at Software One will do that for you. We can't actually distribute it out due to licensing reasons, but the guys at Software One will provide that for you in a follow-up email. But some of the great product strengths are real-time monitoring. So you can take everything, all the information and data from your products and look at things in real time. You don't have to wait and wade through all sorts of logs for hours to understand what's going on and look at one console, one to the next. It will do it all for you. You've got threat intelligence, where context is available around what's going on in terms of threats for your environment. Are you vulnerable here? Are you vulnerable there? And it presents it to you in a traffic light system. So you can have top 100, what's red, what's amber, what's yellow. It's not green. But it gives you an idea of what you need to prioritize and when. You've got behavior profiling, and SIEM will actually learn what's normal behavior for your environment. So with an example of backups, it will see your backup servers, they run on the 1st of the month, and your CPU and memory and disk go through the roof. So that's normal behavior. If a backup was to start halfway through the month, SIEM would see that and go, that's not a normal behavior. And you can alert and report and do things about it. Data and user monitoring, that goes hand in hand with the behavior profiling and also application monitoring. And you also have the advanced analytics. So it allows you to drill down to individual nuggets of information. So if you were subject to a malicious attack, you'll be able to drill down, for example, all the way to the endpoint and the end user and the URL where that attack originated from. You can go into that much depth. You've got log management and reporting. So for customers that are very sensitive in terms of keeping their logs for a certain amount of time and proving things like non-repudiation and things like forensics, you've got that functionality. And you've got very, very flexible deployment options. So as I've already mentioned, with the physical, the virtual, the hybrid environments, you can tailor this solution to grow as you grow. You don't have to settle for a one-box solution when you purchase it. You can plan out your growth with a SIEM solution. And there are also lots of use cases. So there are lots of use cases for compliance, data retention, threat profiling out there. And they are built into the box, and you can get those up and running very, very quickly. So that concludes my presentation. It's just a very, very short introduction to SIEM. If anybody would like to follow up with me, there's my contact details. If you have any questions that you've not thought about or got questions to ask after the fact, please don't hesitate to contact me or get in contact with your account manager at Software One. My phone numbers are also there, so please feel free to give me a call.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. We do have 2 questions already that have come through, so if you're happy, I'll read those out, and we'll look to address those on the call now, if possible.
Yes, I'll do my best, yes.
Great. Okay, so the first question is, I saw the picture of a blade server. Is that hardware that SIEM requires to be in your rack, which has the main software on? I take it this software relies on SNMP in order to talk all the different devices on the network.
Right, so when it comes to the deployment, it's, let me get my words out. So it doesn't rely on blades. So what you can do, you can deploy it to start off with using a combo box if you wanted to. So you can put multiple functions into one box, or you can spread it across multiple appliances, or you can do that on the virtual appliance side of things. So there are so many people these days that have virtual infrastructure, you can do that. So it's either or. You get exactly the same box whether you go for the physical appliance or the virtual, it doesn't matter. And again, you can have a mix and match. What was the rest of the question on SNMP?
Yeah, so I take it this software relies on SNMP in order to talk to all the different devices on the network.
It does use that, yes. There are other methods which I can, if you get the person's email address that's asking the question, I can write down a detailed response.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And one other question is, how does it know what is normal behavior? I take it this is something you have to teach the software.
It learns it. Yeah. Basically, when I speak to customers about evaluating the software, well, the product, it's one of those products that you have to leave in for a while so it actually learns what's going on. You can get an instant return on installing the software straight away, so you can find risks and vulnerabilities here, there, and everywhere. But if you're looking at the behavior side of things, it needs a few weeks to learn what is normal. So an example that I give is my boss. She will be looking at emails till midnight, 1 in the morning. Ridiculous times. But at 4 in the morning, it'll be like, oh, hold on, what's going on? There's something strange there. That's an abnormality. And then you can do something about it. So the system does need time to learn, but that parallels products such as VMware vRealize. When you put that into your environment, it needs to learn what is normal behavior. So Monday morning on an Active Directory server, it's getting bombarded with logons. So the same every single morning. But on a Saturday morning, hold on, there's something wrong there. And that's when SIEM will be able to go, oh, hold on, this is going on. So we need to A, address this, and B, can we automate this? All the other components that are in the infrastructure.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chris. I hope that's answered the question. And from the previous one, again, we'll work with Chris to ensure the right level of information is covered off. So that just leaves me to thank everyone who joined today's session. I hope that's been a valuable use of your time and informative. Thank you to Chris for indeed sort of taking us through the session. As you can see, Chris's details are on the slide, but again, we will be following up with an email based on the information that Chris has been going through, the Gartner link, and indeed the sort of confirmation from the questions on the Q&A session. So thank you, Chris. And thanks again for everyone joining, and we hope to see you on future events. Thank you very much.
Cheers, everybody.